Mom Who Knows Nada. My name is Brianna, and this is the Mama Knows Nada podcast. I'm taking it back a few more years for reconnecting with an old colleague. She's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. We're going to talk about our really fun and interesting mom journey. So Hong, welcome to the Mama Knows Nada podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here with me.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. So I'm really interested to know, did you always want to be a mom?
Yes, but it always freaked me out, to be honest. Yeah, I always knew I wanted to have kids, but the responsibility of being a mom was always scary.
Yeah, I totally get that. So when you found out you're pregnant, I mean, you got married, you've been with your now husband for a few years before you got married. So, but when you found out you were pregnant, like, what was that? What was your reaction in response to that?
It's funny because I had already gone off the pill and we were, trying, but not concertedly.
Yeah.
The only real concerted effort was getting off the pill. And then when I found out I was pregnant, I was like shocked. I had to take 2 pregnancy tests before I could really believe that I was pregnant. And I was like, I felt kind of disappointed. And I'm like, my husband's like, why? We've been trying. I'm like, this is irresponsible of me. He's like, what are you talking about? You're not 20 years old anymore, I'm like, oh, okay, right. So
we wanted this to happen. Remember, hon? Remember?
Right. Yeah. So once the initial shock of holy shit, this is actually happening, then it was exciting.
Oh my goodness. That's so funny. It is ironic. You try for so many years not to have kids. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, this is okay. I don't need to be freaked out about it.
Exactly.
So you have an adorable 3-year-old. So he's just a couple months younger than mine. What is his temperament like? Is he more like you? Is he more like dad?
He's probably a little bit more like me. He is a bit more on the cautious side. Mm-hmm. He takes his time. He's very deliberate and considerate with things.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a kid that will burst into a room. He'll walk into the room. He'll check everything out, see who's over there, checking out their energy and stuff. And and then he'll approach and then go to where he wants to go.
That's Declan is the same way. He's like, I gotta survey the landscape before I make a decision.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's just go have fun. And he's like, no, lady, no.
Mm-hmm.
That's so funny. I didn't know kids could be so intentional, What is that all about? Now,
Yep.
What do you love and appreciate about being a mom?
Well, everything that I love freaks me out. So
That's a fair statement.
The fact that I have this beautiful life that is looking to me to guide as well as just kind of steer him freaks me out. It's a lot of responsibility. And I guess that just reflects on it also reflects the parts of me that I need to work on, or maybe I don't feel as strong with, and the areas I need to improve. So that freaks me out a little bit, but obviously, it's par for the course. It's just what you have to do when you become a parent, and everybody has to, because no one's ever fully ready when you have kids. Mm-mm. So that I love and am afraid of at the same time. But then I also get to expose him to all of the cool things that I've always wanted to do as a kid, and, kind of get to know him and see what he is interested in as he grows and stuff, and exposing him to art and, things like that. So that's exciting.
That is, I gotta say, there's nothing more, I don't know what a good analogy would be, but it's kids are such a reflection, and it's they really show you who you are. You think you know who you are, then you have a kid and you're like, oh, well, I'm not who I thought I was, or wow, I didn't even know that was bothering me, or holy crap, they just bring up everything. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. Has motherhood changed you in any capacity?
It's definitely showed me how really cautious I am about things. And maybe it's also coupled with the pandemic and like, worrying about safety and stuff like that has also kind of added an extra layer of anxiety, I guess,
totally.
to it all. But I think it's amplified the fact that my state of being, my energy is utterly important to how he also, to his state of, wherever he is emotionally and energetically, and how he interacts with the world, because he's only going to do what I do. No matter how many words you say and how many times you say it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter as much as being it. Yeah.
Yep. You can say it's like, do as I say, not as I do. I hate that old adage, but it's like, it's so true. Like, it doesn't matter what you say to a kid, like they emulate who you are and what your energy is telling them. And you're like, oh shit. I got
You can't be the anxious person with no consequence anymore. It's,
you have to like, again, like siphon through that stuff. No, that's really true. That's definitely something that I struggle with too. I'm like, oh crap, like I can't behave that way because he's going to behave that way, and I'm very like hot tempered and Celtic in that regard, and so is my husband. So like I always have to be like the measured one. Crap. This is not an easy job. What do you mean? I'm Irish and Italian. Like, I don't even know what measured and like methodical means. Like, everything is like impulsive and like reactionary. Oh my God, I gotta be the bigger person. Y'all are crazy. What have you found difficult about the transition into motherhood?
Probably that. Mostly because I didn't realize how much I grew up in an anxious environment and like how deeply that ran within my own family. Because I grew up, so my parents are immigrants. I'm firstborn generation in the States. I grew up in a household with my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, and my parents and my cousins and stuff. So it was a very, very full house. And there are, a lot of immigrants that have fled like war-torn countries carry on what they call intergenerational trauma with them. And it's basically feeling like when is the other shoe going to drop? When's the rug going to be pulled out from under them all the time? You can't trust these people. You basically have to be invisible when you interact with people outside of our house, So there was just a lot of internalized anxiety and fear that would come out in like big outbursts, that you wouldn't expect. And I, as an adult now, like understanding more where my parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles were coming from when they were dealing with interacting with American culture, American world, and a new school, and interacting with the world. They didn't speak the language; they had to learn the language. It carried a whole lot of stress. And then as I'm becoming a mom, I'm like, wow, I'm discovering that a lot of those stressors will come up for me, and I'm like, but this doesn't really apply to me. It's just my conditioned behavior that I learned growing up in that house. And I'm like, I don't need to carry this trauma with me, that they carried on with them. So it's a lot of undoing that, so that I don't negatively impact Kingston, of course, but also just my family in general.
I think that is such a truth that we don't talk about enough. Like, our generation has so much more resources and awareness to certain things that we didn't have before. And I come with my family has a whole different kind of like trauma and this like socialized, like, well-being that's, a facade. And you're just like, when you have a kid, it just is magnified, like, oh shit, like I'm carrying all these things, but none of them are mine. Like, how do we get all this stuff put in our bag? Like, I don't understand. Like, I didn't pack this shit. Like, how did it get there? It's crazy. Like, I think that is such a powerful statement, you know, especially as like immigrants coming to a new country. Like, that's huge. That's so hard. Like, that transition alone, that journey, that what you were coming here hoping for, and like the reality, and who can you trust, who shouldn't you trust? Like, how do you navigate this new world that you don't even really know how to like exist in? Like, that's a lot of crap. And then to put that on your kid because that's all you know, like, oh my gosh, that's a lot to like, okay, here, mom, here's that back. Here, dad, here, grandma, you know, here, auntie, like, you can all take your shit back. So I have more space for me. Fuck that. Girl. That's a big one. That's a huge thing. I don't think we talk about like what our parents give us. Like, that's a big thing. And every parent thinks that they're doing it right. And I don't know what your parents were like, but mine was, my mom in particular was very much do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. And we were kind of talking about that before we started recording. And then when I was like going through a whole lot of therapy to get my head screwed on straight, I just had this moment of realization where I was like, I'm holding on to all of her things and all of her actions. Why am I carrying that around? Like, it weighs you down, you know, and I'm still unpacking all that shit, but it's interesting that, and then trying to engage intentionally with my son to make sure I don't do the same thing to him. Like this morning, for example, my husband's out of town. I got all the things to do, and I'm trying not to be frustrated with him because we have 45 minutes to get out the door, eat breakfast, get the dog out, get ready for the day, and get out the door. And I'm like snapping at him. But really for what? Like, for no reason, you know, I'm putting things on him that aren't his fault. And so what I do when I realize I'm being a jerk, because I am, is I always apologize to him. And I always say, sorry, Declan, mommy had a really bad moment. I'm going to do better. Like, I'm sorry. Like, mommy was wrong to treat you that way, because I never got that as a kid. I never got the, oops, like I gave this to you, but it wasn't yours to carry. Let me take it back. I try to take it back from him whenever I give him something he doesn't deserve. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. It's an apology. I never got apologies from parents. No way.
Right? Because parents know best, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't.
Well, just deal with it, whatever, you know? So it is what it is. You know, the world is a hard place.
Yeah, toughen up, you know? Bah. Like, well, nope. I still cry over everything. So sorry, Dad. That's not going to change.
No. Yeah, exactly.
What was like an easy transition or something that came like so naturally to you when your son was born? I mean, that's my reaction too, personally, but
it was not, yeah, you know, the love, I would say the love came easily. Love came easily. All of the other responsibilities of like feeding him, trying to feed him my milk, but he wouldn't take my boob. I had to pump it all, and I had so much milk. And so that was just, that's a rough one. That was a rough one. But I think the love came easily because I just wanted, you know, this beautiful spirit who comes in pure into the world to just be loved. You know, that's really what it was.
Oh, that's a good one. I get that. I didn't have that sense of love. I had like this intense like sense of protection. I don't know if that was something that you felt too, but I was like, nobody crosses me. Like, I will get you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can get it.
Breastfeeding is an interesting debacle. Like, some people are like, oh, it's so simple. And then other people are like, nope. Nope.
Oh, man, it was tough. I had a pump, and then like all the pumping that you do, and you put the baby down, and then you literally have like a half an hour before you have to redo it all over again.
Mm-hmm. It's like a job.
So like instead of like just putting a boob in the baby's mouth, you have to pump it out first and then feed it to the child. And then, oh God, it was just a lot. Yeah.
Did he just like not want your boob, or is there like he didn't want to latch, or was there just like...
No, he just wouldn't latch on. And so I had all this milk coming out. So I was like, well, let's just...
Here we go.
And here we go.
Hey.
You know? So
You gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Yeah, I never had big boobs. And I was like, well, it's going to be one of the times when I have it naturally. So let's take advantage.
I'm going to lean into this.
Yes, lean right into these. And
oh my gosh.
So we had stockpiled milk in the freezer and everything. So that was a blessing, but it was a tough time because you're sleep deprived and you have no time.
Did he sleep well at all?
No. No, not for the first 5 months. He had to sleep on my nap, sleep anytime on our body.
Oh,
so literally I would be sitting, eating a salad like this with him on my body every nap, every sleep, every night for 5 months straight. And then finally it got to the 5-month mark and I was going to a mommy and me class and they're like talking about sleep training and everything. I'm like, I need to fucking do this because I am losing my mind. I'm like, postpartum, was real and it was so hard. So I was like, we just got to do this. We have to do this because if we push it any further, I don't know if I can't tolerate it anymore.
Yeah.
So finally sleep trained him and it went so well. And he's been a great sleeper since.
Sometimes I just need a swift kick in the ass. Like, maybe not like literally, but like in a metaphoric fashion.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, kid, I'm going to set a firm boundary and you're going to follow it.
Yeah.
So we both have a history in hospitality. We both kind of like came out of it. How do you manage that work-life balance with your family and your son?
Man, that was really tough the first year during the pandemic because I was always used to like I can go to the office and then my husband was at home. We had a part-time nanny for like a blink of an eye. And then the pandemic hit and then we were both home in an apartment for, first year of it. And then thankfully we have a house now. We just bought a house in April.
Oh, fun.
But it was, every day is kind of different. But now that he's in preschool, I know I have some designated time to just work and do this and stuff like that. So that has been super helpful, but it's always shifting. And I think that the pandemic, one of the good things that came out of the pandemic is like just increasing my ability to adapt to things. And although it also raised my stress levels a lot, it's just learning to adapt with all of that too. So really it's just I have to be better at I had to be better at communicating with my husband and saying, hey, these are the things that I need to do. When do you need to do your things? And then we'll make it work from there. And then just dividing up our responsibilities. Like my husband does the cooking for Kingston for his dinner and stuff. I handle snacks in the morning and his breakfast and stuff like that. So.
Oh, that's a nice division of labor.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I do dinner and my husband does breakfast because I'm a better cook. So. There, that is a fact. He said that to me.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm really curious because your husband is a triplet, like identical triplet boys, also handsome. Were you, I don't know, like, I guess there's like, I think they say like genealogically, like it comes from like the mother's side or whatever, but were you ever nervous about having multiples?
Yes. Are you kidding? Yes. Oh my God. So he's a triplet. He has an identical brother and a fraternal brother.
Oh, fraternal brother. Okay.
2 eggs and one of them split. So they were triplets.
That's
and cool. Yes, it would freak me out. And yes, you're right about that. But the kicker was that Jeremy's mom has multiples on her side.
Oh.
Jeremy's dad was a multiple. His twin brother passed away early in life. So I was like, well, what happens with this combination? What does this mean? And no one could give me an answer. So the entire time of trying to get pregnant and then getting pregnant for the first few months, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. That freaked me out. It definitely did. So,
I mean, it's like, then you just have that and then you're done, right? No siblings to worry about. You're done.
That's what people say. And, we're trying to have another one. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. You want a sibling for Kingston? He's so cute.
Yes.
Those beautiful babies. Oh, that'd be another beautiful baby. I applaud you because there's no fucking way to do that shit again. But cool. I'll adopt. I'm going to adopt one day. So I really want to get into your family dynamic, because I think it's so amazing. You have these beautiful triplet boys, but like you said, your parents are immigrants from Vietnam, and you speak Vietnamese, if I remember correctly. Are you teaching that to Kingston too?
Excuse me. I am. I mostly talk to him in commands on how to do things. Things that. But I'm not great anymore either. I'm not nearly as fluent as I used to be. I just don't get the opportunity to practice it very much. But yes, so he does know certain things, and then he'll start, and it's really funny when he starts to repeat things that I say, and then in Vietnamese, and it cracks me up because he's teasing me. When he does it. But yeah, so I do want him to grow up knowing at least some of the language.
And so his dad is Black and you're Vietnamese. How do you incorporate and fuse those two cultures together?
It's a challenge because there's not that many Vietnamese people that I know in LA. There's not unless you go down to Orange County, there isn't a huge population here, and I don't know that many people here. And I think the more important thing to me right now for Kingston is his Black side, because that's going to be the side that society is going to interact and judge the most. So what's really important to me and Jeremy is that when we were leaving the house one morning, Jeremy said, be a good boy, and I was like, why do you want to say good? I don't want him to understand, categorize things as good and bad and just be black and white. And there's only two choices. There's not a spectrum of, being his true self or whatever. And he's like, no, he needs to know how to be good, because that's how society is going to judge him. He's half Black. People are going to see him as Black. People that do see him as Black are going to judge him from that. And he needs to learn how to interact with police to be a good person, be a good boy. So I was like, swiftly shut up. And I said, yes, that you are right. So that's part of the reality that we have to navigate.
And it's such I think this is a really important topic to kind of delve into as well, because I think it said that somebody has to think like that in order to get through the day. You know what I mean? I don't have to think like that, as a white woman, and it makes it really sad for me to hear that somebody else has to teach their child how to behave good so that they don't. What is good? It's a relative term. There's a spectrum to, like you're saying, there's a spectrum to being his full self. There's a spectrum to good, and how sad is it that that's the society we still live in today, where your husband has to be this authority on being a Black male in America. Kind of that's heavy, I am on the flip side of that, being cognizant of how other people have to raise their children. I'm trying to do what I can for my very white son and say, hey, you need to treat all people with respect. You treat everybody the same way. I don't care what they look like, what they act like. We engage with kindness and empathy in every situation, because he needs to know how to treat all people, and it doesn't matter what they look like. So it's such it just makes my heart sad to hear that. You know what I mean? But on my side, all I can try to do is make it known that that's not okay, and try to amplify voices that are different than mine, and teach my son how to be a better human being as well. Because that's the only way we're going to get further along is if everybody's on board with saying that this is not okay, that that you even have to think about that. Like, we all have to agree that there's something that needs to change, and it's not okay. So we have to be that change. And I think it's really imperative for us as mothers and raising the next generation to acknowledge and do better. Mm-hmm. That's my 2 cents on that. So I'm hoping that one day my son will be a solution to the problem, and not perpetuating something that needs to be disseminated, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think like with us, our generation is far more aware, and we have access to more information and different ways of thinking than our parents did. Mm-hmm. And we live in a huge information era now, where you can pretty much reach any person, like a celebrity, a scholar, a whatever, and perhaps they will reply or respond to you. But I think that with our kids, hopefully that they will start to be more accepting and applaud and honor and appreciate differences in speech and language and appearance and hair, in the way, people interact in the world. Like there's just a huge, I feel like when we were going, especially with my parents who are conservative Vietnamese parents, there's only one way to be. And if you divert from that, you're bad. If you are not obedient and, quiet, then you're bad. So I was constantly in trouble because I'm loud and annoying and, laugh really loud. And so, but I think with Kingston and the fact that he is a Black kid, the fact that he is a biracial kid, which is also another challenge, because he will encounter the groups, Black and Vietnamese people, who will not accept him as Black, who will not accept him as Vietnamese. So he will be basically on an island on his own, and there will be a point in his life where he will not be accepted in either group from different people that he interacts with, and he'll feel really alone. And that's just the reality. And it sucks and it's really unfortunate, but he's going to have these survival tools in him. And, our job, mine and Jeremy's job, is to remind him that it doesn't matter as much as it hurts, as much as it affects you in your day-to-day life. What you think about yourself is the most important thing. And how much you value yourself is the most important thing. Yes, you have these rules and limitations of how you can react with certain people in certain environments, whether it's in school, whether it's with teachers, whether it's with police officers. Yes, you're going to have to act a certain way in order to get by. But those things, that muscle of yours will develop in a certain way that will get you through life in a very particular way. It will make you stronger than a lot of people that don't have to go through this, and he will always grow up knowing that he has a choice and that he can choose his thoughts. He can choose the person that he becomes. Thoughts, we believe that thoughts become things, and he has the power to change his thoughts and, be the person that you want in any moment, no matter what it is. So.
I love that. I think that's so true, though. Like that, what you give power to, you give life to. So if you're giving power to a certain, I don't even know like a good example, but any thought about like, I'm good or I'm bad or I'm right or I'm wrong, if you give any of those energy, that's the energy you're going to get back. So I think that's really insightful. Like, I think the same way personally too. Like, I think that's so insightful and such a powerful message to give your son, that like, you have the choice. You know, we all have choices. And just because nobody can take that power from you unless you allow that, unless you give it to them. I think we lose that sometimes just as in society. But because I don't know how to phrase this like politically correct. So so if it comes out wrong, I'm sorry. But I think because you have such a different situation than I do, like my husband would tell you, he definitely thought I was going to marry a Latino. Like no one's more surprised that I married a white guy than like my husband. And my dating record would show that. But because that's not my reality, and I do have like a white husband and a white kid, you have different worries than I do for your son. Is there anything in particular that you are like that gives you anxiety or stress about raising a biracial son in particular?
Well, definitely the fact that just he is biracial and he'll constantly be, he'll encounter just a lot of unacceptance and judgment. And like there is, children of color are often faced with a lot of internal and external pressure to assimilate to white culture, especially when you're growing up at school. And like preschool, maybe not so much, but they notice these things. They can see these things. They can notice that like, oh, there's more kids in this class that are white or whatever they think it is in their head, whatever label they put on it in their head. But they notice that, oh, that boy is, they all have blonde hair and I don't have blonde hair and I look different. And, and then, they'll have to deal with like code switching, which is, W.E.B. Du Bois, who's he's a historian, he's a scholar. He was the first Black American to get a PhD from Harvard. He was one of the founders of NAACP. So he came up with the term double consciousness, which we now know today as code switching. So basically meaning you temporarily adapt your Black customs to white spaces, right? And people of color are forced to learn this. It's an art of code switching when they're in mostly white spaces as a survival mechanism. It sucks, but it's just an unfortunate fact of where we are right now in society. And it's a performative act, and it impacts them in a way where they constantly feel like they're at odds with their cultural identity, and they're forced to cultivate it because they have to keep living in this world, in a predominantly white-focused world. And so that question and that of identity is going to be something that he could be questioning now, And that's what's hard is as a mom, you want your kid, even as a kid, any kid, you want to be accepted. You want to be the last person picked on a team for dodgeball, things like that, you want to be accepted. You want to be loved for who you are and not constantly judged by the way you look or the way you talk or the way you, whatever, all this stuff. And it's like, that's probably going to be, besides the racism, the systemic racism and all the other crap that's come up. Those are the things that are really going to impact him in our life day to day.
So this is like kind of off the cuff, but I just thought about it. What would you want to say to like a mom like me? Like, what can I do, or how can I engage with my son to make sure that he is accepting? Or is there anything I can do to make a more inclusive child, in like your opinion? Because we do have different perspectives. You grew up Vietnamese in a Vietnamese house and with all your family, and my family's Scotch, Irish, and Italian. So we're just loud and obnoxious, but we're white. So like, I think it's really important to, what can I do to have someone else's opinion on like what's out there, what's available, like maybe there's something I didn't do or I'm not thinking about, or hasn't come across my mind because I'm I have my experiences. Does that make, I think I'm rambling, but I think you get what I'm trying to say.
No, I understand. You're thinking out loud, and I totally understand what you're saying. Well, I think for any white parent, I know as a woman of color, of a half Black child, I would appreciate it if I were invited. My son was invited to a play date, and he saw, when he arrived at the home, he saw toys that weren't all white kids, not just all white books, not TV shows and YouTube videos with all white people in it, because our culture still, even when I was a kid, grew up on watching TV. Yeah. Our culture, our society is formed, and our thoughts and opinions about other cultures are formed by what we see on TV, in the media. Yeah. So we need to fill all of those platforms with people of color. Mm-hmm. So whether that's reading them books, reading an anti-racist baby, which Kingston loves and knows by heart, toys of different kids with different colors. Like, why do we need to give a little girl a white girl doll? Why can't we just give her a Black girl doll, or a Latina doll or something? It doesn't have to be all just white-faced, blonde-haired toys. Yeah. So having that exposure just automatically gives them, like, oh, I see it every day. I interact with this world every day. It normalizes the cultural differences and multiculturalism in your house. So when they go to school, when they go to elementary school and high school and college and stuff, it's not the first time they interact with somebody outside of being white. Yeah, it's not a shock. Oh, your hair. Oh, your skin color. Things like that. And inviting those kids that are different races to your home for play dates, or, go out for play dates with other kids that are not just the same race.
I like that. I have lots of books for Declan. Every time I try to find like different books. Like there's one, I can't read Chinese, but it's like in Chinese and English too. And it's all about like Chinese New Year. He loves it because it's about food, Yeah. And then I have such like an affinity for like Latin culture. So I'm always like, let's have some Spanish books with like the brown, pigmentations instead of like the white. And my husband's like, what are you doing? I'm like, we're raising a global citizen, babe. He's like, okay. Yeah. He's like, I get it.
Exactly. That's what we need to normalize, is what I'm saying. Is that should be the norm. That should be what we reach for, not just what our parents did.
And and let's be clear here. It's not that we're saying that white people are bad, or like I'm sitting here like trying to say, oh, white people this, or, Black people that are, Vietnamese, whatever, Latinos. I think that the way I grew up, I was always taught to be respectful of all human beings, right? But that doesn't mean that things were accessible to me, and that when I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, in between Amish farms. It was very white. Okay, let's be real here. There was 3 Black girls in my school and no Latinos. No anybody actually, one of my best friends is Korean, but very white passing, and that's a different topic for a different day, because she had a come to moment this past year, but that's not my story to tell. Anyway, but everything in my house, I never had to worry about seeing someone like me on TV. I'm like an archetype here, blonde hair, blue eyes. I never had to worry about seeing anybody like me on TV, or looking up to somebody who is, I always had like a role model that was like a celebrity or of notoriety. I never had to think about it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think it is really important to like break down those boundaries. And I think it is really important to like highlight talent of everybody. And I think at the world that we live in, with our accessibility to people, places, and things, you have to give your kids an understanding of the globe. And the globe isn't one little thing. It's a whole bunch of really cool things that you don't necessarily have to understand or like or whatever, but you can have some kind of appreciation for, some kind of like Chinese New Year, and understand what that means in their culture. You can understand that in Ukraine, they have Christmas a different way. And in Mexico, they have posadas at the holiday times. Like, you can have an appreciation for all the really cool dialects and talents of African cultures and their tribes, like we can have an appreciation for people. And I think that's like, for me, is what I want to give my son, is that there's no wrong way to be a human. End of story. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the noise. And you might like chocolate ice cream and I might like strawberry ice cream, but are either of us wrong for that? No. So why do we make other things quote unquote wrong? I don't know. That's my soapbox.
No, I mean, I understand what you're saying, because it just seems like the way we were raised and how things were. And I feel, you know, before the pandemic, there was still a dichotomy of just this way or that way. And now with everything that's happened, even with like LGBTQ plus community, everything's a spectrum. You know, things are a spectrum. There shouldn't just be a one way or the other, you know, and it should be, we should be more open and accepting of that. That should be the norm.
Yeah.
Like being raised in an environment where, differences are the norm. Differences are respected. Differences are honored, 100%. You know,
No, I 100% agree with you. 100%. Like, and I think it's, you know, I think sometimes we're more alike than we realize. And I think sometimes people are just scared to have a tough conversation because they think that they're going to come off a wrong way. I always say things backwards. Like,
I know. I always put my foot in my mouth, but at least you try.
Yeah.
You right?
Yeah. Trying to be an asshole.
If you're being dismissive or reducing somebody or whatever, then there's no conversation to be had. You're not learning anything.
I put my foot in my mouth all the time. That's a really good analogy. But it's always with an intention of like learning. And it's always with an intention of like curiosity or pure naivete, where I didn't have that experience. So I'm not going to think of it like that. And I learned something. Okay, I might have looked like a jerk, but I learned something, and I won't ever do that again. You won't say that thing again.
And that's like kids. They don't know until they put their foot in the mouth and do something ridiculous. And like, oops, maybe I shouldn't, you know, put my foot into the toilet, you know, like that, you know?
Totally. Oh, man. So do you think there's hope for our society?
I mean, I have to think that there's hope. I mean, there are days when I just don't want to go out in the world of like predominantly white neighborhood.
I'm good too. I gotta say, I live in suburbia, and I've lived in so many cities: LA, Dallas, Baltimore. I was born in rural Pennsylvania, and I grew up in Baltimore. So I kind of like in LA, you could go into a restaurant or working with a staff and everybody was different. And even if like they were white, they were like from Israel or like, you know, Russia, you know, there was like a different like dynamic and culture to them. So you never knew what you're going to get, and you had to like just coexist with people. And I love our neighborhood, and we live in a great community. But I said to my husband, I'm like, oh, it's so white. I was like, why can't you like, I was like, maybe he'll find like some Latino friends that he can like practice Spanish with, you know, just like something. And he's like, wait. I'm like, but I hear you. You're like, oh, this is cool, I think.
Yeah, I love the neighborhood. It's quiet, it's peaceful, it's nature and everything, but there's just not that. Yeah, it's not very diverse.
It's not diverse. What about his school? Does he have like is there diversity in his school?
Thankfully, so I talked to the director and I was like, hey, you know, it's really important for our son and our family that Kingston has other Black kids around him. It's really important for visibility and representation, because at this age, they already notice those things. So fortunately, the class that he's in right now for the rest of the year is half Black. So they have like 5 other kids in there that are Black or half Black, which thank God that happens. So we've been fortunate in that. But
that's awesome.
The school is predominantly white.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in Woodland Hills, so.
Oh, you're in Woodland Hills? Mm-hmm. Oh, one of my best friends up there, and she's Latina, and she's like, yeah, we're the Latinos on the block. was like, well, hey, you're there though. You know what I mean? Like, that's amazing. Like, that's great. Like, give, you know, and her school is pretty diverse, which is really nice. And we have Declan in a Montessori, which they try to like, and so I love it because it's all different socioeconomic groups, and they try to like pick, like, I don't say like pick and choose because that's not what they do, but they try to make sure that it's a level playing field, and like unless you've had Montessori like background, that's the only thing that sets you apart. But they try to like keep it like, you know, as equal as possible. So it's not like the most diverse, but it's like more diverse than the elementary school across the street. So I appreciate that, you know, and because that's important, like for me personally, like I've always had friends of all different backgrounds. So like, I want that for my son, you know, is really important to me. So, it's so tough trying to get it.
I know.
It's so tough to like, I think also because we're so aware of it, you know, like I don't think my parents worried about this when we were growing up. You know what I mean? Like my parents in particular, like they didn't worry about diversifying our life. Like they worried about exposing me to different things and like situations and cultures, but they didn't make it like a priority. Like I feel like I do. Like I want my son to be around a bunch of different people. So I don't know. I don't know if my parents worried about that. Anyway, before I go on another tangent, because I'm really good at that. I know, right? We'll get into what I like to call the nada. So, was there any useless information you received when you were pregnant with Kingston, or that you received postpartum from people?
Useless information. Okay, so my mom came to the hospital when I had Kingston. So I'm like dead tired.
Oh,
I'd
man.
been up for like 32 hours or something crazy, almost 48 hours by that point. And she told me, I don't know why, but she's like, you have to put cotton balls in your ears after you have your child for like a month. I'm like, why? She's like, so the wind doesn't get in it. I'm like, what happens if the wind gets in my ears after I have a kid? She's like, I don't know. Your grandma told me to do it. And I was like, what? And then my aunt's there too. And she turns to my aunt and she's like, you know, didn't mom tell you to put cotton balls in your ears? She's like, no, I never did that. And I'm like, Mom, what are you telling me right now? And so I'm like so tired. She's telling me all of these weird superstitious things, but she couldn't justify them, like give like reasonable justifications for it. I'm like, I am way too tired for this crap. So I would say that's probably the number one most useless thing.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's a good one. I've never heard that one before.
I'm like, what? Even Jeremy was like, what is she talking about? I'm like,
I don't know. Maybe there's wives' tales for reasons, you know.
There's some mom for you, man. I don't know.
Worked at some point in time. What do you wish you would have been told about motherhood?
I wish that somebody would have told me all of the crazy things that would happen to your body after you had a baby for the next year. Like, I didn't realize how much hair would fall out of my head after I had a baby. And I was like, holy crap, there's like bald spots like all through here. So that was tough. You know, that's tough. It's vain, but it's hard. I mean, nobody wants hair falling out of their head, you know?
I mean, and we all have like things that we appreciate about ourselves. You have beautiful locks. So I've got like this wispy stuff here that does it.
I know.
You've got beautiful locks.
Like, so, yeah.
Kids, I swear they ruin everything, man.
Oh my God. Dude, like, really? My hair is falling out now?
I say that all the time. I'm like, goddamn kids, like, whatever. But I wouldn't trade my son for the world. I just say that to be
yeah, I know. Yeah.
Do you have any unsolicited advice for new moms or soon-to-be moms?
I would say take everything with a huge grain of salt. because even if you read a book or have a friend that has like 2 kids or 3 kids that are a little bit older, and they say all these wonderful things, like, do this, do that, do this and that. Oh, that one's not work for you, blah, blah, blah. Take everything with a big grain of salt, because it has to work for you. It has to work for your lifestyle. It has to work for your relationship. It has to work with the way that you want to raise your kids. And some people, like, even though, like, even what they say is coming from, a good place. They have good intentions and everything. But I feel like a lot of the things that I hear from people that don't coincide with my beliefs or how I want to raise my kids is there's a difference of social awareness. I am, like, through this pandemic, like, inclusion and diversity have been huge parts of my life now, and learning more about it, taking classes and workshops about it, and really understanding the real history of our, of our country, and which is everything that we learned in school was completely false in terms of history, things like that.
There's a lot missing.
It's hella lot missing. History is written by the winners, and they write it in a way that makes them seem like they're the saints and they're the saviors. So, but just, you have to go out and seek what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And take everything with a huge grain of salt.
Yeah. I love that. And that's so true. Like, just because it worked for you doesn't mean it's going to work for me. We're different in like our physiology. I love that. I think that's probably the most poignant thing, and you could really say, like, anybody could say, because it's so true. Like, it doesn't mean it's going to work. Damn it.
Exactly.
Anything else you want to share with us today?
There was. So we talked a lot about, our society, and we delved into a little bit about racism and stuff, and I think right now it's such a prominent topic in our family because we can't ignore it. My husband's Black. This is our daily life. Talking about racism is just the norm because he faces it every single day, and probably more so here because we live in Woodland Hills now. And so there's just all kinds of microaggressions that he, as a Black man, has endured all his life and continues to, and like, if you have Netflix, please watch the Colin Kaepernick series. It is incredible. It is educational. It talks about microaggressions and how damaging that they are for young children. It basically, there was a podcast episode on Brene Brown's Unlocking Us, where she interviews Oprah and a neurobiologist. And they worked together and created this book about trauma, basically, and about childhood trauma. And they start to talk about, one of the things we talk about is about microaggressions. So kids of color, when they start getting microaggressions and it compounds over time, it basically turns into a big T trauma, like, huge accident or a tornado wipes out your house, things like that. So those little microaggressions that people, unconsciously or consciously throw at other people of color, those have serious impact on children over time and people over time. So I just want people in the world generally just to be more cognizant of that and just learn. Like, there's so many different TV shows and films nowadays that you can educate yourself about racism, systemic racism, about microaggressions, about, valuing diversity and amplifying those voices that are underrepresented. So please watch it if you have time.
No, I think that's really important, and it's definitely a huge part of this conversation in particular. I remember in a theater class in college, and it was called Special Topics and Diversity, and I was reading a script, and I can never remember the damn script name. I probably have it. It's not that one, because I always think it's that one, and it's not. Anyway, doesn't matter. I was seeing that because I pulled it, and I can't ever find it when I need it. But anyway,
I know.
And I learned more from reading scripts in college about history than I ever learned learning history. And it's funny what you said, not funny haha, but just like a little ironic, or what's the other one? Coincidental, if you will. My husband, when he was learning, about the American Revolution, our war for independence in the UK, just for context, is called the strategic withdrawal from the Americas. So that just goes to show you like what perspective does to education. And when you leave out perspectives, again, I'm not trying to get on a soapbox, but I think perspectives are really important because then they give you the full picture. And somewhere where all those perspectives come together, somewhere in that center point is a more actual truth as opposed to my version of the truth and your version of the truth. Like we need all the perspectives, right? But so I think it's really important that we remember that a lot of perspectives were left out of our history books, and that perspectives change the material that is printed in those books. So his strategic withdrawal is my War of Independence. Interesting. So just to kind of put the icing on the cake there, food for thought, I love this conversation, Thong. Thank you so much for being part of it and sharing your journey to motherhood and what it's like for you as a mom, especially in a very interesting and dynamic time in our history. I think it's really important that we highlight some of the things and there's only some of the things that you and your family have to consider that my family doesn't. So I hope that in the future we can have a look back on this conversation and say, damn it, we fucking raised our kids and they made the change that we wanted to see in the world. So thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your experiences. That means a lot to me for your just openness. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for the chat.
Anytime. I love to talk. I like to talk. So until next time, people, have fun learning all the things you didn't know you needed to know, like that Netflix thing she just told you to watch.